So they're my top five. That'd be my top five tips for you on how to optimize your Google profile to increase rank. But arguably more important is to increase your ability to influence Google's AI algorithms.
So here we are, part two here with Brad Wetherall. Again, if you didn't catch part one, Brad comes from a position of knowledge here. He was one of the ex-directors, or the ex-director at Google for GBP. But he currently has two digital agencies, Esquire Digital, that focuses on the legal industry, and GBP Experts. And he's here really today to talk about the GBP element of that. And we're just going to let Brad riff on GBPs, some do's and don'ts maybe, but really, how AI is affecting some of these GBPs. And Brad, take it away.
No worries, mate. Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, GBP. Let me just first start by addressing the branding of GBP has changed a lot in the last 15, 20 years, let's say. It's been known by many different names. If you don't know it as GBP or the Google Business Profile, you may know it as Google My Business. Before that, it was Google Local. Before that, it was Google Places. I think there was a time where it was Google Plus Google Plus Places, back when Google Plus was a thing, if you remember that. Before that, it was the Local Business Center, LBC. Anyway, now it's referred to as the Google Business Profile. Many people still refer to it as Google My Business. I was actually part of the leadership team that advocated for the name change. People just didn't understand what Google My Business was, and so we thought by changing the name to the Google Business Profile, it would be a lot more obvious because its name is what it is. It's your business profile on Google. The irony is that I never anticipated that a GMB or Google My Business would be so sticky, but you may know it as GMB. And so I worked on GMB from like 2014, I think, up until I left Google last year. I was the director of operations there, and so in that decade-long span, I saw a lot of change, a lot of evolution over the time, and it's really exciting. I think to now be on the other side of the coin, so no longer representing the Google the Google side of things, but to actually be working as the founder and CEO of the GBP Experts, and helping businesses and agencies get the most out of their Google Business Profile. And given that I ran operations, I was also responsible for the GBP support organization. So I'll apologize for that right now. But I think I can also help with navigating the support architecture if your businesses need help. And so with that, I think that talking about how Google Business Profile has evolved and maybe even giving you some tips and tricks, both on helping resolve issues and how to optimize your Google Business Profile for AI, is typically the questions that I get most when people in speeches that I've given across the country, or people who find out what I did as I'm walking down the street. We'll start off with the latest and greatest of GBP and how it's influencing AI. And spoiler alert, I think this is actually, I think, Google's secret sauce when it comes to how it can be a major competitor or even the best at AI generated local business data. I think that the advantage that Google and Gemini have over OpenAI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, is they have access to this GBP database, and these other guys do not. And that is a tremendous advantage. I think that if you're looking for local business representation, right, and data. The GBP database is the most robust database in the world of local business data, and it is absolutely the secret sauce, not only for feeding AI, but it's the most important source that Google has when it's trying to represent a business, because it has two pieces of information that is critical. It has information directly from the business owner. So, like, if Google's trying to tell a consumer about a business, who better to kind of like get that information from than the owner of the business themselves? So that's a direct path for you to communicate with Google the information about your business. And then the second part is other people talking about your business, and Google does that through reviews. And so on the Google Business Profile, the reviews infrastructure that has been built on maps and search is tremendous and incredibly powerful and impactful, both from a rank perspective, allowing like to get your business profile higher ranking in the map packs, but also in conversion of customers, because like I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but like a tremendous amount of consumers will not choose a business before they look at reviews and testimonials. And so, acquiring reviews on your business profile is incredibly beneficial, both from a rank perspective, but also from a conversion perspective. And so, like there's if you look at the evolution of what Google is doing in the AI space too, with it's expanding its footprint with the AI overview at the top of the SERP, of top of the research results page, as well as the experimentation that it's doing in AI mode. If you were to look specifically in AI mode as a preview of what's to come in the AI overview, you will notice whenever you do a local intent query that it's sourcing all its information from GBP. So, the information that you put into your description, your services, like the attributes of your profile, it all gets regurgitated back to you when AI is kind of like representing what it knows about your business. And so it's the most important source of local business data for Google AI. And so, to that end, optimizing your Google business profile has outsized impacts, not only with organic local search results, local SEO, but also with it feeding what AI is driving and getting into that AI mode and AI overview. And so, like, in order to give us enough time to talk a little bit about some of the challenges and tips and tricks, I'll give you a couple of recommendations on if you're looking to optimize your Google business profile. Like, where do you start, right? Like, what do you focus on? And so the first thing that I would tell you to focus on is making sure that you have really optimized and keyword-rich description for your business. And the services section of your Google business profile needs to be detailed, each with its own set of descriptions. And those descriptions should be localized. And what I mean by that is if you have a business that has multiple locations, you should be injecting keywords for each location separately. You don't want to have the exact same description for each service in all 5 locations. You want to have 5 different, locally written sort of service descriptions. That's going to optimize for that listing for that service in that location. Make sure your primary category on your listing is tuned appropriately. I think Bob mentioned earlier that I'm also the CEO of Esquire Digital, who does digital marketing for law firms. For law firms is an interesting example here, because there's a lot of different categories that you can choose from in your Google business profile. You can choose lawyer, you can choose law firm, or you can go much more specific, like personal injury law firm, or criminal, or divorce attorney, or family law, right? There's a lot of different subcategories. And so, if you just put a generic law firm in your primary category, you're not going to get the type of clients that you're seeking. And so like being specific in the selection of your primary category is really important. A great litmus test here is if you know who your competitors are, and you do a search for your competitors, look at the way that their profiles are tuned, right? Like because that's likely the people that you want to compete against, and you probably want to use the same primary category. I mentioned reviews a little bit earlier, but like when people find out that I ran GBP for over a decade, they say, "How do I become number one on Google?" It's usually the first question I get. And while there's 100 things that you need to do and need to do well in order to be number one, if you were to ignore all those things and just do one thing, right? The one thing I would have you do is get more reviews. That is the one thing that Google will look at as proof of existence, and that you're an active business, and that you're actively working, and that you're engaged with your community, and you're engaging with your customers. And it also is a great way for your customers to act as a third-party assessment of your services, right? And if they give you a 5-star review, it's like, this not only do they exist, but they do a great job. And so as a result of that, Google is more likely to recommend you, to get you to be higher up on the list. I think that obviously if, the second question I get, however, is, all right, how many reviews do I need? Right? It's like, okay, great. I know I need to get reviews. How many? And so the way that I would answer that is it depends. What do your competitors have? Right? Because it's subject to your location and your competitive landscape. And so if your competitors have 10, get 15. If your competitors have 100, you have to work a lot harder now. You have to get like 100, 120 maybe, right? So you have to be competitive to what your competitive landscape is. But if your competitors have 200 and you have 10, then you're not gonna compete. You're gonna be a lot further down in the results.
Yeah. So understand why I'm laughing and smiling, because basically, when we get done, I'm going to go outside and yell and scream. I've been telling this to the captains of industry. Okay. I mean, these are people that are worth millions of dollars, right? And it's like, you need to get reviews. And to your point, how many? Twice as many or more than your competitors, if you can. So get reviews. I'll help you. I'll coach you. We'll get through this. And they'll look at you, and you'll have the same conversation 3 months, 6 months later. And I'm doing this podcast for selfish reasons, because when we get done and we wrap this up, I'm going to keep the link to this podcast, and I'm going to hand it to every executive I meet with and say, look, you know who this guy is? He's saying exactly what I'm saying. I just had to get emotion.
No problem, mate. Like I can relate. I had this one customer that I was working with, and they're like, hey, why am I showing up at like number 10 and I'm not showing the local pack? And I'm like, look at, you got 17 reviews. These other blokes have 200, right? Like, what do you mean? Why? And I'm like, go get more reviews. And he came back to me and he said, what else can I do? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Do that.
Well, and even worse, we'll do our job and we'll get them into the 3-pack, right? And they're like, we're not getting any calls. It's like, yeah, you have 2 reviews.
Yeah. It's no, I honestly don't know. I don't know what the hesitation is, or maybe people, like, I don't know if people just don't like asking for reviews. I think, without being too gruff about it, get over it, right? Like ask your clients. That's going to be the biggest thing that's going to drive ranking and more business. And so yes, there are other things to do. I mentioned there's 100 things that we could do. We could ignore number 1 and do all the other 99 things. But if you want the biggest bang for your buck, that's the one thing. Like that's the one thing that's going to drive the biggest amount of change in the shortest amount of time. So yeah, please. I know that people are hesitant to do it. Try and make it systemic. That there are review companies and services that can help you with this. I'm actually doing a webinar with Gather Up next week. That they provide a lot of these services. It's there are people that can help you do this, but you just can't afford to ignore it. Not only for local business performance, but for AI. AI is looking at all this stuff as well, and you just don't want to get left behind. So all right, we'll end our rants there. But yeah, so reviews, definitely remember that one. The other tip I'd give you too is making sure that you have a fully complete profile. So this is where Google asks you a lot of questions on your profile. There's a lot of attributes in there. Do you offer free Wi-Fi? Is it pet friendly? All these different things. Is there accessible? Is it wheelchair accessible? Hanging, all that fun stuff. The best practice and what I would recommend you do is go in and answer every single question. Right? Most businesses will leave all these questions blank. And that's a mistake. Google is looking at this, and they have free states in the database. It's either yes, I offer free Wi-Fi, no, I don't offer free Wi-Fi, or I don't know. Right? It's blank. I don't know. And so if you go in and you answer every single question, even if the answer is no, right? Answer is that, but now Google knows more information than it does about everyone else. And so if you have a complete profile, it's going to increase Google's understanding of your business, and having more data is a proxy for data accuracy, right? Because if it knows everything, it has more reason to believe that the information that is appropriate and representative of your business is accurate and true. And so so engagement is another form of a proxy of data accuracy. So like going in and replying to reviews, making local posts and things like that. That is an indicator to Google of activity where the business owner is actively engaging with its profile. And that is a proxy for data accuracy, which is going to give you a bump in rank. Complete profile. The other ones that I would say, I mentioned local posts as a great example of driving engagement. But the last one that I'll give you would be multimedia content, right? So like photos and videos. This is becoming even more important. It wasn't as important maybe 5-10 years ago, but now with the introduction of AI, AI is smart enough. There's a tool inside of Google. We called it MUM. It's a multimodal unified model, I think. We just called it MUM. And basically what it means is it understands images and videos. And so it can watch videos, it can interpret photos. I think I heard this story the other day where someone was searching for a bar, like a restaurant that had a full bar, and the only way that Google knew that it had a full bar is because there was a photo of the bar in its profile, and it didn't actually have any words. It wasn't in the description or in the services or anything. The only way that Google possibly could have served that information is because it was interpreting what it could see, and it was seeing it in these photos that were being represented. So I think that a big tip recommendation that I have is make sure that you've got real photos in there. Don't plug in there AI generated photos. That's actually going to be a detractor. It should be real people performing the work that you do. Like if you're a services company, have photos of the people performing that service. Right? It's great because it's real, but it's also good for AI because it's like, yeah, I can see them actually doing the thing that they say they do. So they're my top 5. That'll be my top 5 tips for you on how to optimize your Google profile to increase rank. But arguably more important is to increase your ability to influence Google's AI algorithms.
Excellent. Well, with those videos, do they have to be YouTube videos? Could it just be, if you're a plumber, hey, this is how you do this, and then just post it type of a thing?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're already doing short form videos on social, you drop them into your GBP as well. I think that those types of things, and it's I talked a little bit about are you dropping those videos in there for humans or for machines? It's a little bit of both, right? Like you're dropping it in there for both. And if you've already got that content, if you've already got that videos because you're using that to promote your business on social, it doesn't hurt to also drop that on your GBP because it'll help feed AI.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So a quick question I have on that topic real quick with GVPs. So it is looking for edification, like you said, from socials, YouTube even or whatever. Is there any merit for a business, we're talking local businesses, to join, let's say, a local entity and tie it into either the website or GBP, such as the chamber or the Rotary? I mean, is that just another bit of evidence? And does that, if you want to expand your GBP, do you join the Rotary for the nearby city and say, you know, I mean, any thoughts on that as a tactic?
Yeah, it's like transparently speaking, it doesn't have a huge influence on local search rank, but it does have a huge influence on AI and organic rank. So website optimization. And so it kind of works a little bit more from the perspective of that authoritativeness that I was talking about in part one of our discussion. Where when you're trying to influence AI, it's about proving to Google that you are an authority on something and that your perspective is trusted, right? And that you increase your trustworthiness. And so if you are represented in local chamber of commerce, like local like or industry specific affiliations and organizations and whatnot. So again, if you're a lawyer and you're showing up as top lawyers, like it's or super lawyers is another one, then it increases Google's trustworthiness in who you are and your business brand. And so it absolutely is worth it. I think making sure that you're good. Now, I would be careful because there are some organizations out there that are really going heavy on citations, right? Like, and it's like, oh, you get in these 100 directories, right? And I'm like, look, I personally am very skeptical that has the impact that they are claiming it does. I believe that a few important citations is more powerful than a lot of crap, right? And so like like being in, so there's a couple directories you should absolutely have to be in, right? So like GBP is probably the most important. You should all get in ABC in Apple Business Connect. You should get in Bing. I know that might sound strange that a Google guy is saying get into Bing, but I don't know that I necessarily care about being in Bing, but I want to be in ChatGPT, and ChatGPT uses the big data, right? So I know it's a little strange for me to say that, but it's true. And so like there's some strategic ones that I would get into, and then once you kind of get through those large kind of like industry agnostic type directories, then I would go industry specific. So like depending on what industry you're in, go into the authority of that particular industry. Try and get in those. I think that's going to be a much better strategy than going to a large citation provider and paying for we'll get you in 112 like 112 directories. I'm like, I only really care about 20. So getting 20 of the important ones is better than getting 100 of ones that doesn't really matter.
We talked about standard GVP 101, if you will. Now do we want to dive into AI and how it's going to affect GVPs and everything in the future?
Yeah, so I think I think the AI lens is what I've noticed with AI is a lot of the recommendations that I just provided in terms of optimizing for your descriptions and services, primary categories, photos and videos. Like those are probably my best tips, and I have actually case studies where I've done exactly that. And, after I've optimized the Google business profile for those kind of like top 5 tips that I just provided, I then went to AI mode or AI overview, and I'm like, hey, what do you know about this brand? Right. And I just kind of like gave it a prompt. And it regurgitated all that information back to me, and I'm like, this is brilliant. This is how I know it works. Right. Because like if I put in I think some of the language that I put in was like, it was a law firm, and I'm like, it is a female led firm that that has a culture of winning big, and I could see all of those phrases repeated back to me in the AI. And so I could tell that the kind of like optimizing that GBP for AI was working. Now I'll be careful by saying Google may change the algorithm tomorrow, and it might change all completely. But for right now, I think and I think that this has got legs. I don't think this is going to go away anytime soon, because GBP is a Google owned platform, right? And it's like it has ability to kind of like assess trustworthiness of its own data. So I don't think this is necessarily going to go away anytime soon. But I think those tips are probably my biggest recommendation on influencing AI, specifically for local intent queries. That's not going to do much good for informational intent queries. That's where I would have a very different strategy for you, and that would be more content marketing based, and kind of like building up pages of content on your website, blogs, but then also improving the authority of the author of the blog itself. So like who wrote the content, or at least who's attributed to the article, right? Like is very important. And so we write a lot of blog content for our law firm clients, and part of the strategy is trying to figure out who we're attributing this authority to. Like who do we want? Who's going to be their public face of their brand, right? And who's going to be that authoritative figure? So figuring that out for your company is a really great way to make sure that all of this effort that you're putting into is funneling around someone that will be able to benefit from that from AI's association of that content to an authoritative figure.
So that blog author has to have some connection, and I think you're going to get into this, but some connection, either whether it's through Reddit or some other entity, right, to some degree. I mean, is that what we're trying to drive towards?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah. So, having, like a profile of the author, right? Like who is the person that wrote that content, because it's, Google's going to look at the content and it's going to say, okay, this is great. It's answering a question for me. Okay, cool. I like that. Can I trust that information? I'm like, oh, I don't know who wrote it, right? What do I know about the author? And so, when you think of Google generating this neural network, that's kind of like what AI is, where, the original search architecture was built on hyperlinks, right? It was built on, if you're linking, and this is kind of like where the investment in backlinking came from, right? It's like, oh, I need links. Like you share with me, I share with you. Like we get links, everyone grows, everyone's happy, right? And I think that AI came around and just broke that model. And so they're like, links don't matter to AI anymore, because it's got this neural network that has replaced this web-based, hyperlinking philosophy. And so now the neural network is, okay, what do I know about Brad Wetherall? Like, what is it? What are the other things associated to him? Like, what do I know about this topic? And like the association of the topic that I want to answer a question on, and this person, and like, where else is Brad Wetherall referenced? Like what else do I know about him? Oh, he was on these webinars, right? Like he talked about these things. And so, it kind of has the ability to provide this intelligence and pull together all these different nodes of information. And so if you as a marketer, or, like if your business, you're trying to establish an authority on something, it's not enough that you just write the content and throw it on a page. You have to associate the company brand to that thing, or a person to that thing, and then the person to the brand, right? And so the connection between all of those things will kind of like help with the association. And as AI is starting to comb through its vast array of data to try and answer a question for a user. It hopefully connects these dots. And it's like, okay, here's the answer written by this person. I can trust them because they work for this company and they've done all these other things. And so that's why I'm going to believe that. And I think that there's an interesting, I don't know if I want to open this can of worms, but like when I talked in the prior session about Google moving from being a search engine to an answer engine, another interesting take on that is Google is creating information, creating new things, right? Like it's reading the internet and it's coming up with its own opinion. So who owns that content? Right? Like who is liable for that content if it's wrong? I think that's an interesting set of questions, and I think that, Google had this ability to just kind of be like, oh, it's their website. They wrote it. Right. But like when I create something, this is where I just don't know that, that the legislation and regulations is really caught up to the technology. And so, I think that Google is taking a very conservative approach to this because, there is a lot of misinformation out on the internet. And so if Google starts sourcing misinformation and then providing it as fact, that can be very dangerous. And so, that's, I think, another reason why it's being very conservative about where it's sourcing its information from, which then from a marketing perspective means we have to invest a lot more to prove to Google that what we're saying is legit, right? Because it's if it doesn't know, if it's on the fence on whether it's legit or not, it's probably not going to serve it because it doesn't want to be held liable for providing bad information. So it's that is another ever evolving space, but just an interesting thing to think about because like we're playing in a sandbox now that doesn't really have a lot of rules defined on it, and it's I'm sure that over time things will get a bit be made a bit more clear and have more guardrails around it. But it's a little bit of the Wild West right now, so so it needs to just kind of Google needs to be very careful, and I think they are. I think that they're taking a very responsible approach to it.
Yeah, I do think there's enough to send you down a path, right? That everything you do needs to have some kind of, call it a citation, right? Or a link to some validation that you are in fact, who you say you are or whatever. And to your point, 5-10 years ago, it didn't matter. But today it does for a lot of reasons, liability, accurate information through the AI process. So I think if you set out to do that, and as you author your blogs, just make sure, that Google has the information, and you could potentially, again, put your LinkedIn deal next to it or some connection to your Reddit deal or whatever, right? Just so Google has some easy way to validate it. Or more importantly, I'm sorry, AI has, I keep interchanging them, but AI has a way to validate all those things.
Yeah, and so you mentioned LinkedIn there a second, and I've been remiss for kind of talking about social media's role in all of this, because I think that is another huge source of information, and where we're even starting to see this within the Google Business Profile directly. We're now starting to see feeds of social media content be incorporated into the business profile, and so I think it's a good window into Google's philosophy around not just providing information that it has within its own databases, but associated information that it can extract from a lot of these social networks. And so, so like, again, when we talk about building authority and trustworthiness, social media is actually becoming a really powerful tool. Even Reddit, like I know that a lot of the informational queries, and discussions on topics, Google is pulling information directly from Reddit to facilitate a perspective on what the discussion is and like what people's beliefs are. and it's just fascinating to kind of see that, like for some types of queries, I haven't yet seen Google use Reddit as an authoritative perspective on a factual case, because it's just a bunch of opinions. But it does index Reddit very heavily when it comes to engaging in a discussion around something. So that's actually been a very interesting trend in terms of search volume, and even Google serving Reddit as its number one search results when engaging in certain topics. So I thought that's been very fascinating.
Yeah, and I wouldn't think, maybe, I don't know that AI is necessarily going to, maybe they would, but preference Twitter or X or whatever, just because we don't know how clean that is relative to the bots and everything else that's out there, right? And so, to your point, anything that's full and more human centric, and human derived and created, I would think would have a stronger chance of AI saying, "Yep, that's who he says he is," or what have you, to get that profile. So, wow. Any other AI tips any other AI tips as it relates to GBP that you can think of outside of what we just talked about?
I think that those are probably the main ones that I would lean into. I think having a complete and accurate profile is going to be the best path. I think I know that people run into a lot of problems with GBP. I think I very rarely get customers coming to me being like, my GBP is amazing. Can you make it more amazing? I don't think that's ever happened. I think the people that come to me are people that say, I've been suspended and I can't get out of it, or I can't get verified, or all my reviews disappeared, or something went wrong, right? And they're the people that are seeking help, and they're the people that are usually the ones that find us, right? Like they find the GBP experts and they're like, hey, I need you to help resolve an issue that we are having. And we specialize in that, like, and not just for small businesses, but for agencies as well. I have a bunch of clients that have me on speed dial in the event that one of their clients gets themselves in a predicament and I don't know how to get them out of it. And I think this is where, us having direct relationships with customers. We do listing management. We specialize in issue resolution, but we also want to make sure that the real value of a GBP is getting you more business, right? Like you get more customers, and so you need to have a healthy profile to get customers. As the GBP experts, we kind of specialize in making sure that we do whatever we can to get you ranking in the top 3 so that you're visible in the map pack. And then you will get more customers as a result of it. And if you're an agency that is getting stuck, we can consult with that agency and make sure that we're passing on best practices, or in the case of some of these more tricky situations, resolving your case on your behalf. So I think that's what I would say, just in terms of thinking about the services that we offer from the GBP experts. I do think that we talked at length about why GBP is important and its outsized impact in influencing local intent queries, specifically in AI. The next step then is how do we make sure that we're kind of positioned to take advantage of that connection between GBP and Google AI. And it's really about making sure that your listing is optimized and healthy and working as intended. And if you find yourself in having problems with that, I think that might be a good candidate for where the GBP experts can help you. So keep us in mind for that. I know, Bob, you're probably going to throw a QR code up on the screen at some point of, like going to the GBP experts, or even just hitting me up on LinkedIn if you're interested. I love, being on the other side of the curtain from Google, where I was like behind the scenes. Now I'm out in the spotlight, and I love talking to business owners, and helping them solve issues. I get a lot of energy from that. So don't be shy. Reach out and see if we can help you out.
Sounds great. Brad, as we're talking, there's probably, a handful of clients that I have. And then I know there's half a dozen prospects that have come to me probably over the last 3 months with just horror stories with their GBP. And then I have some high level prospects that, you and I will collaborate on because it's absolutely critical. And I would throw out this, and you can comment real quick, but I would say for local service businesses, easily 70% of the calls or leads come off the GBP. We didn't get into call tracking, but I encourage my clients to call track the GBP and call track the website. And typically I see a 70-30 split. 30% comes off the website, 70% comes off the GBP. Would you say that that's accurate?
Oh, absolutely. It reminds me of a study we did in San Francisco. We had this one customer come in and do a user study, and we asked her how much business does she believe that she got from Google, and she said, I don't know, so probably around 10 to 15%. And so we said, all right, where do you get the majority of your business from? And she's like, foot traffic. And so we're like, oh, okay, all right. So we did a study. We actually put a beacon. We went to a store because she was local. I was working out of Mountain View at the time, and it was just real easy to go to her business. We went to her business. We put a beacon in her business so that we could track people as they were kind of like walking into the store, and we could associate whether that particular person had historically done a Google search for that business. And so we're able to measure it. And the actual amount of traffic that originated from a Google search was 80%, 80. And so like her perception was that 10 to 15% originated from Google. And we were able to show her the data and say, actually, 80% of the data is originating from a Google search. And she was blown away. And she's like, oh my God, had I known that, I would have been spending a lot more time focusing on how I'm represented on Google, right? And I always remembered that story, and I've told it to a lot of people because I just don't think people really understand the outsized impact that Google has in driving traffic to your business, especially for brick and mortar businesses. So yeah, I absolutely think that investing in GBP is the way to go, and making sure that it's healthy is really critical.
Cool. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Again, I encourage you to reach out to Brad if you have GBP issues. We're going to have his QR code on the YouTubes. If you're listening, just try to go to YouTube and catch this. We'll actually probably have links in the show notes in ways of getting a hold of Brad. So I really appreciate you coming out. Brad's going to be coming out with a book here in the next 6 months or so. We're going to have him back on when he releases the book. That's going to be terribly exciting. You can probably catch Brad depending on when this comes out. There's a Bright Local event that's occurring in England right here in the next couple of weeks. I'll be seeing you, Brad, in October down in Miami, hopefully. But he's just, again, Google him. He's everywhere, and I'm sure he can help you out. So that ends this episode. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching Local SEO Tactics podcast. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss any new insights. We've got more expert tips on SEO, AEO, and digital marketing strategies coming your way every week. Want to dive deeper? Check out our other videos right here, or grab our free resources in the description below. Thanks again for tuning in, and remember, staying ahead online starts right here.